Here we go. Welcome to Tequila Tuesday 6. Thanks to everybody for joining me and all of you kind people getting together again. It's a lot of fun. We have 3 of them here in October, so it's packed, and I'm pretty excited to have my good friend Richard Harris here, my partner in Surf and Sales and the Surf and Sales podcast. And we were talking a little bit a couple weeks ago about what might be a good topic. And, it was all about like jobs and interviewing and negotiation skills. And I can't remember who, but somebody had multiple job offers that they were dealing with. And Richard and I were kind of trying to talk through how we might deal with that and all this kind of thing. So that led to, me saying, Richard, it's about time we had you on Tequila Tuesday, man. Long overdue. So Richard, why don't you introduce yourself real quick for anybody who doesn't know who you are, and we can just start taking questions, or you take over, Richard. I'll just kind of keep quiet over here. And
cool. Well, the first thing I love to do, and I don't know, you guys may not do it that often because you've already done it before. I love for people to just go into the chat and punch in what city or where they're dialing in from, because I always think that's cool. That even in this great big wide world, we can create a real sense of community, which is really, really important in 2020, if not anywhere else, that's for sure. So I'm excited to see that we're international with Toronto in the house. So knew some people from Franklin, Tennessee as well. Anyway, my name is Richard Harris. I've been doing sales training for about 8 years. The best way to describe what I do when people ask is I tell people that I teach people how to earn the right to ask questions, which questions to ask and when. And that can be an SDR, AE, customer success, sales engineer, anybody through the sales motion. And that's the essence. That's 80% of my business. I do a little bit of advising like Scott, but not to the depth that he does. And I do a little bit of process stuff, helping people develop their process, but not to the depth that Scott does. Which I also think is what makes us fun when we work together, because we don't overlap a lot. I don't think we've ever competed on a deal since at least in the last year. So, yeah. And if anything, I've probably given Scott more leads than he's given me. So he kind of owes me.
Not that you're counting.
No, just 3. So that's what I do. And the joke between Scott and I a couple of years ago was that, man, if we could just get paid to be interviewed, man, because we used to go to interviews and try to collect offers. And we would try to figure out, all right, I got this one and I'm about to get an offer, but you know what? There's this other company that's really cool. And how do I hold them off? Right? And how do I do that, but not ruin this one because I might need it? And then we also got into the interview questions, like what are the right kinds of questions people should be asking, and should I be asking them? Because most interviews suck. Most interviewers, most sales leaders that I work with, they don't know how to ask as good of questions as they should be. Not to say they don't, but that's really what I think. So that being said, I want to pause for a second and see, do people want to talk about, hey, Richard, how do I answer these questions? Hey, Richard, what questions should I be asking? Hey, I'm juggling offers. And we can go down all of these paths, but for me, it's not about me coming in. I'm a lot like Scott. I don't want to come in and just tell you everything. I want to make sure it's meaningful to the group.
Don't be shy. Everybody should be able to take themselves off mute. If they can't, then I have screwed up.
We're talking in the chat. I'm cool with that.
Hi, Richard. I'm Jill Goldhorn. It's my first time in this Tequila Tuesday, so I'm glad to be here with you. So I've had my own company for a while, selling digital rewards, SaaS-based platform. And now I'm thinking of going back in either on the client side or with a larger vendor. And so I haven't interviewed probably, I'd like to say in a while, but maybe ever. I've always had one job come to me while I'm in another job. I've been lucky that way. So I'm a little bit out of practice, but I'm a good talker. Just wondering what the questions are. And more specifically, I do get asked from people why, if you have your own company and if you're an entrepreneur, would you want to go work for someone else?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, for me, it's a life circumstance. You know, I have a daughter in college and a son about to go, and I have all the freedom and ability to travel and change it up. And I'm not closing my company. My business partner is taking over. He has small kids and it works well for him. And I'd like more of a global role and manage a large team again.
Got it.
So I don't know if that's a good answer or.
No, it's a great place to start, and I'm going to ask for some clarifying questions.
Certainly.
Why emotionally are you going back to the real world after running your own company?
Honestly, I feel isolated and a little lonely. You know, I want to be part of a bigger team. I miss leading a big group of people and having an impact on big strategic directions of
So,
business.
and I think you can still have that, but be mindful that, you know, in today's 2020 world, depending on where you're going to go and who you're going to work for,
I'm still at home.
you're still at home, right?
Well, right. Yeah.
You know, and this is the thing that everybody struggles with, right? When you go from one side to the other, right? And you know enough that the grass is sometimes greener, but not always greener.
No doubt.
You actually lose a little bit of that freedom you have, right? You don't get to just take Friday off and go see your daughter at college, or you got to get permission to take vacation. And so the reason I'm asking is I don't want you to stay where you're at if you're unhappy. I just like people to be mindful of, like, just remember, these are the things you're giving up, right? And
I'm not unhappy and I don't have to change, but
yeah,
I feel I'm being drawn in that direction.
yeah.
I have a lot to help,
Yeah.
a lot of
So
experience.
if someone comes to you, and others can chime in on this, by the way, I think I know a lot about this stuff, but I'll never say I know it all. And they say, well, you've been running your own thing. Why would you want to come back here? Like, I mean, we should expect that question, right? It should be probably
Yes.
the first or second question, right? And for me, that answer is that um, I'm looking for a new challenge.
Yeah.
I've accomplished everything I want to accomplish. My partner's taking over. It's time for me to move back into something different. I did that because my kids were, here, and now they're here, and I have the ability to go and do this. And I'm really looking forward to more strategic initiatives. I'm looking forward to helping someone else accomplish great things, and I would try to focus it back to them as best you can, right? Your job is to help that person do their job better, right? Whether they admit that or not. That's the part.
Right. Agreed.
And
Yeah.
so positioning your answers in that regards are super helpful.
That's great advice. Thank you.
Sure.
We have a question for you, Richard.
All right.
From, where'd it go? There you are. Ms. Westgard. You want to take yourself off mute? Introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori.
Hey, Lori.
Hey, Richard. I understand you're from Atlanta originally?
Macon, just south of there. But yes.
Okay. My family's from the Atlanta area. My husband's from Denver, so he's a Broncos fan like you.
Yep, that's my other favorite hometown.
Yeah.
In fact, Scott, I forgot to tell you, Kathy said if we ever move, we might go to Denver.
Oh.
There's worse places to go than that.
Yeah. So go ahead. So Lori, what can I help you with?
Okay. So Richard, I am transitioning into sales as kind of my second career. I'm well into my 40s. I have a lot of experience, not in sales per se. Scott's been helping me, and I've been doing a lot of research, listening to a lot of podcasts, working on my resume, all that kind of good stuff. So any advice for someone starting out? And also, I'm interested in your experience with education sales.
Got a couple of questions there, so that's really good. So education sales, it's been a while, but I've done it. I actually ran a sales team and an inside team that is now called River Deep, but back in the day, you may have known it as Reader Rabbit. Vegas Beacon teaches typing. Where in the world is Carmen San Diego? All those gamification of education. That's so, and we sold directly to the school. We also had a channel play where we had resellers selling. So we were competing against each other for the same deal all the time. And our company was terrible at navigating that. So I'll stop that. But yes, so I have some level of education experience. What was your first career? Or what are you transitioning from, maybe is the better question.
I am bilingual, Spanish and English. Grew up in Mexico, so that's very much part of who I am. So I have a cultural perspective, a global perspective. But I've been a teacher and then an executive assistant. Those are my main jobs, other than being home a lot.
So Scott and I have talked about this. Any chance I can ever hire a teacher, you get to the top of the pile, 100%, because you know how to explain things in a very simple way. You can take what someone believes is complex and break it down to elements, right? I've got two kids, 10 and 12, same as Scott. And math, it's complex for them, whereas it's like this for me. I'm good at math. I like math. But teachers who can explain that, that's an amazing sales skill. And I would highlight that till the cows come home, right? I don't even care if it's you're teaching the kids the alphabet song. Like there is a proper way to lead someone through a process to help them feel good about the decision they're making or the things they're doing. To me, that is teaching and that is sales, and that's where they cross over. I also think you have probably a stronger level of patience than at least me, but I know Scott. Like Scott's off the rails when it comes to lack of patience. I know this is the fun part. Everybody's not used to me just ripping on Scott, right? Like this is the best.
That's what they're here for.
Right. So, so now help me understand where your concern is around that. And by the way, before you answer that question, I would say the exact same thing happens as an executive assistant. You have to take control of a conversation. You have to learn when the executive says, do this, you probably have had to say, well, hold on, before I do that, do you really mean this or do you mean that? Because you figured out that sometimes people don't ask for the right thing. And you can push back and say, no, Richard, that's not how the kind of assistant I was. But I think you're naturally wired for it and made for it. So I'm excited for you, in case you can't tell.
Well, I like that. I think that's very true. I think teachers know how to explain things. So I think that's an important piece. For me personally, I'm just very early in the journey where I'm trying to figure out, yes, I need to start at inside sales. I need to build up my experience. And I'm trying to figure out which companies to target. So I'm doing my homework on my own time, on my own to try to figure out what I really want to pursue and how to network and get my foot in the door.
So
sorry to interrupt, Richard. I don't think I realized, Lori, that you were bilingual and speaking Spanish was so much a part of who you are. I don't know that we ever talked about that. That's a massive advantage if we figure out the right kind of organizations for you.
Is there, sorry, I 100% agree. I'll double down on what Scott said. And is there a particular reason you wouldn't go into educational sales, educational software, educational SaaS sales?
There's no reason other than, I'm 47 years old, and when I start out this career, I want to do it smartly, and, I don't want to put myself in a box.
Richard, what do you think about the education ed tech sales cycle? What do you think about the ed tech sales motion and sales cycle? I know you know my opinion of it.
Yeah, it's a tough cycle, right? it can be tough, but again, you bring a level of real empathy that no other non-teaching salesperson could ever bring. You have the story. I know somewhere in you it's like, I know you wish you could get it this quarter. There was this one time when I needed something this quarter and I couldn't get it till after June because that's when funding is released, right? So it's a tough cycle. However, I think that it's worthy of you, particularly at this stage. It's almost like you take as many interviews as you can, Lori, right? It doesn't really matter,
All of
right?
them.
Right. And you definitely create a list of, 1 to 25 companies, right, of your favorite. And you try to get as many interviews with 23, 24, and 25 first, not number one. You want to role play these. This is the part Scott and I like, is that it becomes a game. And right now, we're just trying to exercise some muscles in a different arena that you just haven't known you could use in that direction. Now, I will tell you what I love about EdSpace. One, it's blowing up right now. Like it's crazy blowing up. Like there could never be a better time to be in ed tech sales than right now in 2020. And I think it'll persist a little bit into 2021, which also tells me that they're probably hiring. I haven't
Right.
looked, right? And again, you're a teacher and you want to take that passion of how much that you helped and expand it. Like there are many beautiful things about ed tech sales. The single greatest one is how altruistic it is. You are no longer teaching one, you are teaching thousands. And that's the kind of stuff you'd want to bring out in an interview. Why do you want to move into sales? Well, I love this. And you can be honest, I'd like to make a little bit more money for my hard work.
Oh, you
But I
should
still,
be honest about that. You should own that big time.
yeah. And I still want to take care of the kids. I know how important this is right now. Like, and that's now again, you also have to decide if you want to go into that industry. Like, I can't force that on you, right? But I think it's an easy in for you. It's certainly, I would hope it's an easier in just for some interviews, which right now your win is to just have some phone interviews, just get someone to respond back to you, right? It's not about getting the job. That'll take care of itself. But right now, we just want you to exercise a little bit. The other nice things about ed tech, and you know this, you know how the funding cycles work. You know, I'd be willing to bet you know how grants work. You could probably align how an organization needs to work at the state level to fulfill the grant requirements to buy the software that your team sells. Like you bring all this institutional knowledge of, well, here's how a principal thinks, here's how the district thinks, here's how, like you have all the insights that every sales rep in sales would love to have if they've never been a teacher. You are coming from the inside. So anyway,
Well,
I'm gonna stop there because I'm preaching too much, but
okay, you all are being very nice, but I did hear you say that one thing that you and Scott like to do is strategy wise is have a list of companies and then start practicing with the companies at the bottom of the list till you perfect your interviewing skills and then move down the list to your top choices.
I would also say I would reach out to as many recruiters as you can because they're going to interview you. And guess what? Even if they don't want to put you in front of somebody, which emotionally doesn't feel good, it's a practice interview,
Right.
right? And again, if you find the right recruiters, Scott and I play this game all the time. You talk to as many recruiters as you can. Go let them do all the legwork, but let them know that I'm a teacher and I want to go into ed tech sales. Even if you don't really want to, just go get the interviews. And they're going to know that that matters and they're going to start to work with you. And you can even say, look, hey, I want to do this because I want to make more money. I want to stay focused on it, but I know that I'm not in sales yet. So I'd love your opinion of my resume, Mr. or Mrs. Recruiter. Like,
Okay.
let them give you that feedback to support you. And again, I don't care what industry you're going in, every salesperson should do that. Talk to as many recruiters as you can. Tell me about my resume. Treat that first recruiter interview as another interview. Then the last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop preaching. on the job search, it's tough to keep your motivation going. So for me, contacting and having a conversation with a recruiter is as equally valuable, if not more so, than with an actual company. So if you only have a week where you're talking to 3 recruiters and no actual interviews, that's still a good week because you're practicing, you're figuring it out, you're dialing it in, right? So anyway, now I'm going to stop.
Okay, well, awesome.
Thanks,
Thank
Laura.
you guys very much.
Yeah.
Anthony, let's go to you, man. You had some really good questions, and I know that you are in this exact position right now. So it's appropriate.
Scott, why are you taking Scott? When is everybody supposed to take a shot? I thought this was Tequila Tuesday.
It's not a drinking game, dude. People can drink at their own Richard. Okay. I'll take a shot for the whole group. Okay.
There you go. There you go. So don't make Riley come in here and do shot for shot with you. Right?
Go for it, Anthony.
Yeah, no. So perfect subject. So I'm in this exact boat right now where I'm talking to several companies, all very similar roles, and so right now I need to make the decision of what company I want to align myself with, and I'm curious to understand what you guys feel like if you were in this position. What are some of the things that you guys look for, right? Is it title? Is it culture? Is it equity? Salary? Something other than that I've listed. Is it doing the thing that you love and aligning that with your role at the organization, right? Maybe it's not title. Maybe it's just doing the thing that you love, right? I think a lot of people will say title's bullshit. And so I'm curious to understand what you guys really look for in order of priority and why.
Can I go first real quick, Richard? Because I have some context for Anthony's situation. Right. First of all, I actually don't think titles are bullshit. I think that they matter a great deal once you get out of the sort of frontline kind of environment. So, for example, it matters a lot whether you've been a VP of sales before or whether you have not. Mm-hmm. It'll be much harder to get a VP of sales job without ever having that title and tag than once you've had one before. So some context around titles matters. And when I was navigating my career, and Richard could probably attest to this because he was bearing witness to it, but like I was absolutely optimizing for a title. It meant something to me to not be a director, but be a VP, to not be a VP, but be an SVP and that type of thing. And each step of the way, I use that as leverage to increase my base salary, increase my on-target earnings, to increase the amount of equity that I would ask for, to increase the amount of random stuff that I would ask for, which hopefully Richard gets into a little bit later. So I am in the camp that titles do matter when you're at the level that you're at. And for those of you who don't know, Anthony has been a VP of sales before and is looking for his second VP of sales gig, I believe, right? Is that right, Anthony?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one last point, Richard. So for the stage you're at, Anthony, where you've done it once before, there's not going to be a huge delta anymore between what your base salary was and what it can be. Not at an early stage company, okay? And same thing probably goes for on-target earnings, okay? The delta now becomes equity and also like how much decision-making power you have, how much freedom you have to certain things. But it's equity. And there are multiple VPs that you and I both know, and Richard knows, that screwed this up, and they have a VP title, they have good base salary, good on-target earnings, and they have almost nothing, like a laughable amount of equity. And they have said to Richard and I, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't know that. So I think for you, where you're at in your career, that's something to think about. And now I'll shut up and let Richard take over.
That's awesome. Appreciate it, Scott.
Anthony, good to connect with you, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, man.
So I'm glad you're here.
Tough days.
Yeah. So one of the things that I encourage people to do is, particularly if you're making and not in a negative way. You're making a little bit of a lateral, but maybe you're slowly going up the ramp. Maybe you're going from a certain series to another series, or maybe you're going from Series C down to Series A, right? But there's more equity, as Scott's saying, like there's more upside on the back end. Be sure you write down all the shit that bugs you about your last company. Like, my VP, my CEO micromanaged these 12 things. I couldn't go and buy sales loft without getting his permission.
Mhm.
I couldn't get a budget that I could just be trusted to spend at some point. And maybe the first 6 months or a year, you do go get, the sign off, but that trust for me is huge. And I've watched Scott struggle through this. Scott, I hope you don't mind me saying. Um, and I've asked it. I've gone into an interview, my last real job. I said, can I make decisions on my own to buy these kinds of things? Very specifically. And the owner said yes. Didn't happen. I had to have two conversations, each about an hour and a half, to get approval for two licenses to Sales Loft, Anthony. Like, I spent more time arguing for it than it ever would have cost us for the year. And that was a huge red flag. So write down those things. And sometimes it's, hey, I'm not getting enough support. I would have liked more support at learning how to be a better executive, right? Like, I would like, what kind of executive training do you get? What are you going to teach me, right? Which we'll get into is one of the questions you should always be asking people is, yes, why should they're going to ask you, why should you work here? My answer is, why would I want to work for you? Like, what's so great about you? Now, you can't really say that, but you can find a softer way to say, hey, that's a great question, but how do I help you do your job? What can you help me do to help you do you can find those things. So figure out the shit that annoys you first, write that down. And then you have to decide, how much does it really annoy you? Does it annoy you because it was the fifth time they did it, or does it really annoy you because, you know, God damn it, I can't spend, $300 a year for two people to have a license to something. Um, that's one thing. The other thing, Scott and I, and who was it that we were talking to, like last week on the podcast, a couple of weeks ago, and this woman said, she said, the definition of culture isn't whether or not you get along with people. The definition of culture is rooted in how easily you can get shit done in that organization. And I think that's a huge thing at the VP level, right? How easy can you get shit done?
Yeah.
So I would be asking a lot about, how do y'all make decisions? Like, is everything a group decision? What's that like? Is it a good process? Do you wish it was different? That kind of stuff.
By the way, here's a pro tip tell for how an organization makes decisions. How complicated is their interview process, and how fast do they get you out an offer or tell you yes or no? So if they're just hemming and hawing about it forever and it seems to like drag on, that's how they make decisions about everything else.
Yep.
Can I hop in for a second? Anthony, I bounced around a couple VP of sales jobs, and so I've probably been in your seat before, and really I didn't hear enough. I know Scott knows you better about your situation to be able to give any advice. Like, some people need to maximize for short-term cash flow. Some people are able to, make a little less in the short term, and they want to optimize for equity in a home run, down the road. Some people need to pick up skills or want to change industries. Some people want to move on to a CRO or move up or whatever it is. So there's like so many different factors of what's really driving you to make these changes that probably you only know about, or, a few people that, for me, that's what would really drive the decision in your own personal circumstances. I've talked to other people in similar situations, and some of them were just having a baby and they wanted all the cash right now. And they took away the equity in order to like maximize the company or maximize their take home because they didn't believe in the future of the company. And they're basically taking the job as a mercenary versus like, wanting to work there a long time. So it really just depends what your goals are and what you're trying to get out of it, and your motivation for making the move for which one of those 5 things I would try and maximize for, really.
Awesome. Cool.
Good stuff.
I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Now, do you have something else to add, Richard?
Yeah, I was just going to add to the mercenary thing. 100% agree. Every job I would ever take at this stage of my career, and this might scare you, Lori, because I know you're just getting into sales, um, you are a little bit of a mercenary. But you're only a mercenary because that's how the company would treat you if they decide to make a change, right? Now, that doesn't mean you become a jerk when you leave. I'm not suggesting that, but it's okay to be selfish, right? It's okay to say, you know what, I took this job and it wasn't the right thing, right? And that's okay. You can do it politely. You can do it in a politically correct way. So just be mindful to all those things that matter, Anthony. Anthony, what does matter right now to you? Title, equity?
Yeah, yeah, those things. I think the autonomy, going back to what you were talking about, the autonomy to be able to design the sales org foundation. My experience has always been from seed or Series A level to growing the foundation to Series D, right? And so being able to have that level of autonomy to do it again and again and again is important to me as well.
Got it. So have you written out your ideal job description profile?
I have not.
So think about it like a sales customer, right? What is the ideal company? We know what that looks like. It's this series. Okay, well, what do I want in that CEO? I want someone who's brand new, has never been a CEO because I can help them. Or it's like, no, I don't want that person. I want the CEO who's at least done this once and can teach me some things. So again, it's like defining your ICP, right? Define the profiles you want. It's never going to be exact. Don't worry about it being exact. What matters is you get it down on paper so you can decide what's important for Anthony.
I love that. It's a great idea.
Cool. All right, Vlad, I'm not going to go to you for a question, but I'm pretty sure we just all heard you try to microwave your dinner.
No, actually, I'm making a salad.
Okay. All right.
So.
I'll let you off the hook.
By the way, we got one bear down, Scott. Did you see that? I haven't seen anything from the Sun Devils. We got one bear down in the chat. So
needs to stop. I don't know how many U of A people can possibly exist in my world. They all need to go. I can only handle so much. Catherine, can you take yourself off mute? You had a good question that we want to get to.
Hey, so I interviewed today with a CRO that is hiring for his team. It definitely looks like a very heavy lifting role to fill in. The sales team is kind of going through a lot of, so this is newly, it's a new CRO. So he has been in the role since July, and he has been doing a good chunk of changes and modifications in the organization, trying to align them and getting them to a success level. It looks like the sales team hasn't been performing to their expectations, and so they want to change that. So he's looking for a director of sales to take over. I'm a little bit, concerned or just curious to know if there's it could be a red flag, the fact that he's not hiring for an actual VP and it's just relying on a director, considering so much work is needed to get that team through.
So I think it's kind of a good red flag, right? In the one instance, it's possible that they want a director to grow into that position who's hungry, right?
Okay.
The flip side of that, where it's a really bad red flag, is they don't ever want to promote somebody to VP because they don't want to pay that kind of money. So I don't know, right? But that's the piece you've got to try and figure out. And you have to, and again, I think it's a fair question to ask. I think it's a fair question to say, hey, I'm looking at this, and you've got all this. Just out of curiosity, what's making you want to focus on a director versus a VP?
Well, we know, if we don't want to sugarcoat it too much, you know the reason, Richard.
I know, but I want to walk them into it. I want the person to turn around and go, oh, we want somebody young and hungry and those kinds of things. Oh, great. So if I achieve the metrics in the first 12 to 18 months, does that mean I get the title for VP? I want to interview for the next job along the way. Now, Catherine, I will also say, and I know you too, Catherine, is that depending on where your life is right now, you may not want to ask that question, right? If you need to get a job and it's COVID and, we got bills and health insurance and all those kinds of things, I get it. But I sort of want to walk them into that. And Scott may disagree. Scott may be like, if you try to trap me in that, Richard, I'd be pissed at you and I would never hire you. So I'd love for Scott to maybe say why he wouldn't do it that way, if you think that way.
I just think the reason they're trying to hire a director, not a VP, is because they don't want to add somebody to the executive team, and they think that they can get away with paying somebody less and giving away less equity, and it can serve as a little bit of a bridge. And even if you succeed as the bridge, they're going to top you off by hiring somebody above you down the road. That's 100% real and what's happening.
So Scott, how would you say that in the interview? How would you, or would you not? Would you avoid that interview?
If I wanted the job or needed the job, there's no way I would say that, because no one is going to be prepared to hear that. No CEO is ready to hear that. Not from somebody who's interviewing for the director level job, and probably they wouldn't want to hear it, from somebody interviewing for a VP or CRO role.
Yeah, they just don't want to face that. And that's maybe, those are the things that have been me thinking a lot today. So the interview was supposed to be today, but we just ran out of time. So an hour was not enough. And then we're going to catch up again tomorrow morning.
I wouldn't ask them that. I would just know that and file that, away in your head.
So then my question to you guys would be, and if it's okay to ask kind of a follow-up question, but it is, when we close today, so I asked, okay, what should I bring tomorrow so that we can move a little bit faster into the conversation? And he definitely asked me to come back with a plan on how he can measure my performance when I step into that role. So I'm like, I don't know. I feel that there's just way too many red flags, maybe.
In terms of, to write your compensation plan?
That's a stupid question that he asked you.
No, yeah. I don't know if regards, I don't think it was necessarily in terms of the compensation, but it was more on the performance. So he's like, okay, come back, you tell me how you should measure the amount of work is needed.
They're asking you to do all the hard work that they either don't know how to do or are too lazy to do.
Yeah. Or they're asking you the simplest questions ever to see if you're remotely qualified for this particular role.
Yeah.
That's just that's a softball. Like if Richard was the CEO and he asked me that question, I'd literally give him one of these looks like, are you serious, dude? What kind of question is that?
No. So anyway, I think it sounds like your gut instincts are right, that there's a lot of red flags here. Right. Now, this is, again, I won't speak for Scott, but I'll halfway speak for him. This would be the part where if we recognize this, we try to have a little fun in the interview. We would probably say some of the things that we've been saying, knowing that we aren't going to take the role.
Yeah. I'd want to test it. This is where I test certain things.
Yep. And so I do that and it's okay, right? It's kind of like I'm going to break up with them before they break up with me.
Yeah. Well, once you detach yourself from the outcome, you are free to do whatever you want. There is so much power in that particular freedom of not caring about the end result. If you don't offer me the job, I don't really care. If you do offer me the job, okay, great, I'll think about it. So in the middle, now I can ask you all these questions or make these statements that are kind of bold and emboldened, like, seriously, that's kind of silly. How do you measure sales leaders' results now? How do you measure your own results? Same way that everybody else does. That's how you would measure my results. Why are you hiring for a director and not a VP? Are you just trying to save a little bit on equity and whatnot? Do I have the possibility to grow into that VP, or are you going to just top me off later on by hiring this guy Richard in 2 years? Once you don't care anymore, it's a fun way to kind of play around during the interview process. So
I really am not desperate to.
yeah, then
Like I've told you, it's not that I.
then Richard
I
and I
don't
would tell you to
care.
have some. Then Richard and I would tell you to have fun with it.
Yeah, like I honestly just don't
I
care
might
if
even
I
try
get
and
it or
take it as
not.
far as I could to get the offer letter and then reject them. But that's where Richard's way more of a dick.
Yeah,
That's just way too
that's-
much, Richard.
that's the wildcat in Richard. I can't
That's right.
do that. All right, I'm gonna even the score up potentially here, Richard. Kelsey, are you there? Kelsey has the next.
Here. Richard, you're a Wildcat?
I am.
Oh, we at least have 2 Sun Devils in the group. Scott and I both.
There we
We're
go.
Trading.
Go, Richard.
Sorry, everybody. Sorry.
Okay, so my question really comes down to, I have my final interview of 5 tomorrow, and I'm meeting with the director of sales, who I've already met with on my second interview. So I've talked with her prior, but she is assuming the manager role for the position that I'll be potentially hired into. So without being able to meet who would actually be my manager, what questions would you go into wanting to have answers to with the director of sales?
I would say a couple things. One, I might, in the right moment with the right finesse,
Mm-hmm.
that question. Hey, I'm still working on your culture. I'm trying to understand things. What should I know about this person so that if I were given the job, I could help them the best to my ability, right? Which is kind of like, what question should I ask them, but I don't know, right? And it shows you're doing this research and you're prospecting a little bit. I think that's a really important one. I think posing the questions, let's assume tomorrow was the interview with that person. I would probably write out 4 or 5 of those questions, and then I would turn around and assuming I'm interviewing with you, Kelsey, and I'm not talking to my boss, I would say, hey, Kelsey, these are my questions that I would actually ask her. And I know we haven't been able to coordinate it. How do you think she would answer these?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And make sure that they're appropriate. Like, don't go softball, but don't go fastballs either, right? Like, don't pitch inside, right?
Okay.
So that's one thing. One of my favorite questions, and I ask it everywhere of every person at every time, is, hey, if you could change 3 things right now at the organization with the snap of your fingers, what would those 3 things be?
Mm-hmm.
And they're all going to respond with this. Wow, that's a good question, because
Yeah.
nobody ever asks it. And they're going to give you some answer. And then you've got to be willing to say, by the way, what's preventing it from happening? And that this goes back to that culture piece we were talking about with earlier of like, how fast can shit get done? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that's a favorite question of mine to ask. I would also try to find ways to, ask this person, what are the qualities and things you want this person to do, even though I don't report to you, but that would help you?
Okay.
What are the things that would help him or her? Where are the gaps, aside from what's on this resume, where are the gaps you want me to try and fill in the sales process, funnel, anything, right? So that you're going deeper than the standard questions, right? Because where those gaps are, you want to decide if that's where you want to be, right? They may say, hey, we want, 20 call coaching sessions a week. And you may be like, I don't want to do fucking call coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's okay. But we want to ask those questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
The Sun Devils. Andre, you're up, buddy.
Hello, everybody. All right, so I have turned into a mentorship role, and I was able to land a job at a company from doing some crazy-ish. And as I've gotten into this role, I've realized that like I enjoy my job and I want to get other people of color basically into the industry. I have like a piggyback question a little bit off of the teacher's question. If I'm trying to get somebody into the industry, but they literally know nada, but I know that they have like the drive, the work ethic, the creativity, how would you go about potentially teaching them to get like prepared for the industry? because I've been able to, but they've been landing with like shitty ass companies. As I'm with this like super great company who's giving me all of the tools I need in the world, my friends are landing jobs basically with companies that are like, all right, you're the first rep that we're hiring. So I'm like curious as to how I can help position people without experience to get jobs that actually have substance.
Well, will your company take those people?
Well, my company will, but I don't know, just like to a degree, the amount of people that I'm trying, like they're like in different areas. My company's hiring specifically in one city.
So I guess I'm confused by the question. Is it your job to find these people? Are you in the recruiting side? Like I'm confused.
It's not his job, Richard. He wants to help. He
just
wants to help
okay.
other people get a similar opportunity that he was able to find, right?
Yeah.
And he's struggling with watching his friends land in less than optimal places.
Got it. So you don't necessarily want them to come work at your company, per
Yeah,
se.
I mean, I would love if they can, but
By the way, his company is gone, Richard.
Got it. Okay. Well,
all right.
well, we got it. That's fine.
Okay,
Like,
proud sponsor of the Surf and Sales podcast. Gone.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with saying that.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I think the first thing is, are they willing to even accept coaching from you? Right? It's like I've been playing golf with my son all summer long, and he refuses to take a lesson. And my biggest problem in life with my father was how much he yelled at me on the golf course, so much that I quit at the age of 10. So I've been very conscious when Bodie gets frustrated to say, hey, bud, do you want me to give you suggestions or you want to work on it yourself? And it's the hardest thing when he says, I'm just going to work on it myself. I'm like, okay. So part of it is, are they even willing to hear it, Andre? Right? Are they willing to have that? My guess is, knowing you and your positive energy, they probably will. But it's really hard to go in and say, hey, Andre, you should do this and do this and do this and do this, right? Because now I'm just dictating to Andre. And Andre doesn't need to be dictated to. He's a grown man. So it's a much more subtle sales game to do that, right? It's different in this environment because you guys are asking for advice. So I can give a little bit more direction with my tone. That being said, are they miserable? Do they hate it?
So half of it is them wanting to do it, and the other half is I've literally had people who say, hey, I'm making $40K a year and I have full benefits. I'm nervous about this transition because it's not secure. So it's half of me trying to convince them that this is an actual possibility. And there's another half of like people saying, I'm ready. What do I do? And I'm like, damn, I can tell you what I did, but you have a kid and a job. Like I was able to commit full time. So,
and I think that's a super honest answer. And I think that's exactly what I would say. I've said it 100 times, like in the last 3 or 4 months. I know Scott has too, is like, look, I'm all about going for it, but I'm well aware if you've got a mortgage or rent or kids or you're getting married or you're saving up for an engagement, like timing is really critical. It's never going to be perfect. Like even before COVID, even in January, you still had anxiety about this shit. It just feels, it's definitely more, focused on right now. And I've been seeing and hearing that the industry is hiring for sales right now. So again, this is where I would also tell them, who they should talk to? Talk to a recruiter who can tell them what's going on. Hey, I'm not sure if I should leave yet. Because guess what? That recruiter will help them get there, right? And that recruiter is not going to go blow their cover. They're not going to go kill the messenger. So I think that encouraging them to talk to more people aside from you is a step. And then if they start to do that, then you could give more direction.
okay.
Yeah. Can I give some hard truths, Andre?
Go for it.
Are you sure?
You know where I'm at.
Okay. I mean, if I'm you, I would very candidly say to them, here's all the things that I did. If you do half of these things, you should expect half the result. If you do none of these things, you should expect none of the result, right? And you, as kind-hearted and as ready and willing to help as you are not really in a super powerful position yet to help 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 people, okay? So some of the best work you could do would just be to hold up a mirror to these people and these friends of yours and be like, the answer is staring at you in the face. How bad do you want to make it happen? And not to totally, I'm not disagreeing with Richard. I don't feel like I am, but like on some level, it's like, man, I kind of don't care about all the reasons you have not to do something. I don't care that you have a kid and other responsibilities and a baby and all this kind of stuff. Like, if you want to make it happen, you will find a way, period, you know? And a long time ago, long time ago, when I started doing some of the things and making some of the moves that you made, Andre, I ended up saying adios to a lot of friends who couldn't keep up, for lack of a better word. And we all know that you kind of become who you hang out with, and unbelievably, our parents were right. Don't hang out with that kid. That's the bad kid or whatever, right? You know, you become the average of the people that you spend time with. And I cut those people out of my life, you know, because they were on a different path and weren't willing to do the same things and didn't follow the advice that I had. And I basically just ended up saying, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for you anymore. For those of you who want to come along on this journey, here's what I did. I'll help you if you're willing to do it. Those of you who aren't willing to do it, bye. And I'm telling you, you know, you're like in your mid-20s right now. Those conversations are coming, and you're about to need to have them quick, and they need to hear it. Whether they execute on it or they don't, they need to hear it, and that would be the best thing that you could probably do for them. Okay.
Andre, I heard an analogy. It's like a lighthouse and a tugboat. And for the first group of people that you're talking about, it sounds like you were trying to pull them into what you see for them or whatever. And that's going to be like nearly impossible. I don't know. You're pretty young. Like if you've ever tried with someone with substance abuse to get them help or whatever, like if they're not willing to admit it or like try and get the help themselves, it's going to be impossible. And you're going to spend your time dragging these people like a tugboat instead of just like setting the example of who you are and what you've done and what it's done for you to do this stuff kind of as the lighthouse, show them the way. So really that first half of people are going to drain your time, and you're going to have to realize real quick who is accepting of change and who wants help, who's open for that. And if they're not, you're never going to be able to get them there. You can just show them what it does for you, but like dragging someone's going to be impossible.
Yeah. That also means, Andre, that you aren't able to work on yourself, right? Like the beautiful thing about Scott and I's relationship is we poke fun at each other. I probably poke more than he does, but at the end of the day, we challenge each other constantly. You know, well, what about this? What about that? Should this person be on the pod? Like, well, we need to look at it this angle. Like, and you want to be with those kinds of people, right? And if you're spending time on people who you can't help or aren't willing to accept help, that means they're not going to help you either.
Yeah, it means you're wasting your time. All right.
What else?
Jacqueline. Jacqueline has a really good question, Richard. Super relevant, and you have experienced this, I believe.
Hi, Richard.
Hi.
It's great to meet you. I love your shirt, and this is super impactful. I would love to know, what is the most professional way to speak to gaps in your resume, and what is the best way to go about that?
Best way to do what to your resume?
Speak to the gaps in your resume.
Honestly, with a little bit of falsehood. How big is the gap?
Wait. Honestly, with a little bit of falsehood.
I need more details. That it means own that there's a gap, but you don't have to tell it. Let them figure out what's in the middle of it. What was the gap for?
Well, this year, Corona.
Okay. So how long have you been out of work?
I'm going to have a pretty sizable gap, like definitely like almost a year. Just because there were things on my resume that I didn't think were worthy to speak to and didn't really highlight my career. So I just wanted to know.
What have you been doing in that time?
I've been doing Patreon groups, Scott's Patreon group, going to Thursday night sales, working on myself, like you just mentioned, and going through it, you know, figuring out what I want to do in life and potentially making a career pivot.
There, can I add context, Jacqueline?
Please.
So there's a couple stints that just ended up being shorter than one would like.
That's right.
So, no, I'm just trying to add context. And so it's like, it's been about a year since there was anything like stable and long-term, and you can kind of, you know, rubber stamp and be proud of and that kind of thing. And it's like, how do I talk about that? Do I ignore it? I saw somebody say we were traveling, right? Jacqueline's also an incredible artist, as you can see behind her. She sold a couple paintings. Should she just be like, you know, I took some time off, I've been selling my art? All of those things is context, Richard.
Yeah. So here's the answer. You took a gap year. So what did you do? Oh, you know what? I honed my craft. I spent this many hours a week learning more about sales. I spent time painting so that I could figure out what I wanted to do. It's a gap year. So that's a little bit of truth. It's actually more truth than falsehood, but they don't need to know that, oh, you work here and you work there and you work, you know, they don't need to know that shit. But you can build it out, you know, you can talk about, I attended, you know, this many webinars on these topics, and here's what I learned. And I attended Thursday night sales, right? And fuck them, if they don't know what Thursday night sales is, that should be the next red flag, right, Scott? Like,
But what Richard said, I think, is a really good call out, which is not to just say you went to certain webinars or summits or whatever, but like mention the topic. I think that's a really good call out. Like, I went to this topic on cold calling. I went to this event on social selling and whatnot. Yep. I like that a lot.
So, and by the way, Scott, fuck you. What do you mean I have a lot of experience with this? I never had this big.
I didn't say you had a lot of experience. I said I thought you had some experience with this.
Thank you.
Does that make you? The other piece I want to, you know, speak to, Jacqueline, is because I have been through job searches. I was always very good at just finding a job so I didn't have a gap. And I took a lot of crappy jobs along the way because of it. One of the worst crappy jobs came out with the best result was working with Scott and becoming this close friend. Like, it was not a great job, and he knows it, but it was a amazing experience for the two of us. But I want to talk about the emotional stuff, right? Like, I want to talk about, Jacqueline, that, you know, we start to create these self-doubts. We start to think, why am I not good enough? Why am I not getting called back for this interview? Why am I not getting interviews? And I just want to remind you that you are everything in that picture behind you, that you are as good as that picture. You are good at everything you do. You have a skill, you have a craft, you understand a process. You understand what it took to make that painting at a deeper level than anybody could ever understand a sales process. So please try to find the ways to be kind to yourself in those moments when it's tough, right? Which I think is why you go into a lot of these groups. But there's the mental game of this stuff too, particularly right now. And the best thing you got is COVID, right? It's kind of like, why are you hiring now? Well, we finally got budget after COVID. It's the same excuses you got, right? Like, they're in no better position, right? They had to lay off a ton of people probably. So anyway, just be mindful to yourself and be good to yourself, because it's a really tough position to be when you're going through this interview stuff, and remind yourself of the good things. And sometimes you write out the bad stuff to get it out of your body, and then sometimes you write down the good stuff to remind you that you do good things too. So.
Well, I wrote down your 2 cents, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good stuff. Matt Toth, you ready, buddy?
Yeah, man. What's up, Richard? All right. So after about 12 and a half years, I find myself looking for a job. And luckily, sort of activating my network, I'm in a position where I'm in about 5 different interview processes, but they're all at different timings. So some of the startups for VPs of sales they're very quick. They're like, hey, we want to hire right away. They're willing to take chances. You know, there's only maybe 3-4 people that you speak to. And then I'm also in the running for a couple of bigger companies as well, which, you know, could be a month, month and a half, 2 months. So one, I'm struggling with the timing aspect. And if I get an offer letter from one company, how long can I take to negotiate that and just kind of like drag my feet to collect, you know, the paper, as Scott calls it, to make sure that, you know, I'm getting the best opportunity, getting the best offer, taking the best job for, you know, both myself, my career, and my family.
Got it. So first question. So have you actually left NEAT yet?
They left me the beginning of September.
Good. Well, fuck them.
Exactly.
And I can say that with passion. Scott, I don't even think you know this. This is when I came up with my NEAT selling name, and I trademarked it, and these fuckers kept fucking around with me. So
I did not know that.
I got your back, and we can talk
Hey, you
offline
struck
about
a
that.
nerve, Matt. You struck a nerve with Richard.
Yeah.
I knew I would.
I'll go. I'm sure you can't talk negatively because you probably had to sign something, but you know. I
Oh
can do it for
God.
you.
Yeah. With what I do on LinkedIn. Yeah. They locked me up big time.
That's all right. But you know what? Look, you were there 12 years. That's an amazing experience. So like that's a huge run, and it's super exciting, and it shows that you got a tremendous amount of growth, and you should be very proud of everything you accomplished there. Also, because I know how you transitioned from literally a mechanical device to a SaaS platform. Like I know this stuff about you. So you've got an amazing story to tell. Coming back um, to how do you play off the offer, right? So how many? This is the sweet spot that Scott and I like living in when we do this stuff. Is making sure we understand on calendar, literally you pointed out, and you know somewhere along the way you need to say, great, when are you looking to make this decision, right? And this role, do you have the offer yet?
I'm getting an offer this week for one, and the other one, like they said, they were moving quick and they're dragging their feet, but that's a nice logo that I could go work at there. So I want to see what they're offering. And then I have another one that I don't know, like 8 people deep. I don't know when it's ever going to end. They never give me an answer.
So here's something, and I don't know how Scott would feel about this, but you know, we'll see. This is where I get really snarky. Um, you wait patiently for this offer that's coming. I assume been given the um, the verbal. Has the verbal even come?
Uh, yeah, with a story, but yeah, a verbal game.
So this is playing perfectly for you. Now you're in the driver's seat in my mind. You keep plodding along. You can always go back and say, hey, you know, we forgot to cover this in the verbal. You know, is there time to talk about it? You don't even have to. You can wait a day or two. You wait for the offer. They said it's gonna come this week.
Yeah, they said by the end of the week.
Got it. So great. So they're gonna give it to you on Thursday and Friday. Your response is gonna be, wow, this is great. This looks fantastic. You know, are you married, Matt?
I am, yes.
Yeah. You know what? My wife and I have an agreement that we always take the weekend to think things through. And there's no way they can push back on that. I mean, they can, but then that's a signal for you to just understand, right?
Yep.
So that buys you a couple more days so you can think about it. It's important, right? And trust me, unless there's high pressure and it's a really good job, but you're like, I got to get this title because it's the next title, I would try to put it off till Monday, right? I would then try to figure out where you are with this other, not the one that's dragging forever and ever and ever, but the other one that you said that's sort of a little bit closer to getting an offer, and seeing where you are and just saying, hey, I'm really interested because you guys are my top runner. But even if you waited till Monday to tell them you got the verbal, you know, I'm getting a verbal. And so, but I want to, I can tell you I'd rather come to you, right? Even if you're not going to go to them, but they don't need to know that. This is your decision. This is your life and your livelihood. Um, I'm not opposed, by the way, and a lot of people would say no. I'm not opposed to taking the first offer and still writing out the interview process for the second or third. And if you decide you're going to go to you like the second or third one, sorry to the first one. Like, no offense. They're going to be pissed. They're going to hate you, but they can't talk about it. They can't say a thing. They can't go to LinkedIn. They can't write a review of you. They can't. And they can't because they forced you to sign a non-disclosure when you started the interview process. It's a really tough move to do. It sounds cool. It sounds like some evil soap opera dude. But I'm not above doing that because at the end of the day, I have to take care of me and my own and my family. And, you know, this is the way it works.
That's right.
Yeah, I early on I got put in that position where I got an offer right away, and I was waiting for a few of these other ones to start the process even further. And I asked around, and the resounding answer was, "Hey, don't don't drag them along, or don't sign the offer or take the offer and then go back and get out of it." So,
what's the rationale for that, do you think?
I don't know. I guess your network, your net worth, your all that kind of stuff. Again, like I said, I just asked a few people in my network, and that was the answer that came back. So I don't know. I was kind of in between, but
which answer feels more like you, Matt? The one those people gave, or the one Richard gave? And whatever your answer is to that question, I'd go with that direction.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I like playing the game, but yeah, I'm definitely a person of my word. I mean, 12 and a half years at a company, right? I'm pretty loyal. So I would feel rough signing on to something, but, and then turning around. But again, my family's number one.
Then do it that way and follow that.
Yep. You got to do you, right? You can't be Richard and, Scott, Scott and Richard have this ability because we work for ourselves to have an F you attitude to everybody.
Well, we had a little bit of that before we worked for ourselves.
So I think you do need to do what you need to do. But the thing that I will say is that the beautiful thing about being in sales, you're always a free agent. There's never a contract you got to write out. You're not in the last year of your first rookie contract. You can go when you want to go, but you've got to be comfortable doing that. I would never want someone to do something that makes them uncomfortable.
Cool. Thank you.
John Carsant. This might be my favorite question yet, actually. You know why, Richard?
Because he's a Sun Devil?
No, I don't think so, at least. Because it's all about money.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
It's all about money, which, everyone's so scared to talk about, right? Yep. So kudos to John for asking this question.
Cool. Richard, nice to meet you. I actually spent most of my life in Lafayette, which I believe is right in your backyard.
Yep.
So, nice to actually meet you. So, let me give a little bit of context for the question. But here, first I'll ask the question, I'll give a little context after. So at what point do you prioritize the experience you're gaining at working and helping grow a startup versus the money you actually could be making at a bigger company, more established, funded type of company? And the context is, I've been working at startups for like the past 5-6 years remotely, out of the country. And now I'm in a position where I'm actually like in leadership, making decisions, helping grow the startup. It's going really well. So I'm happy with that. But in the back of my head, I've got Scott here messaging me all these open positions for sales, and I'm sure they're well funded, and I'm sure the salary is going to be great. And so that's always in the back of my head, like, well, I'm happy now, but I could be making more. At what point do I think about the experience I'm gaining by actually growing a company versus having to stay in my lane and in a bigger company?
Well, I think, this is maturity, right? This is adulting. We all reach this stage, particularly when you work in the sales startup world. And you got to decide what part matters, right? What do what means something to you, So, you're still early enough in your career that you got a couple of moonshots in you, right? In terms of going after the next startup. However, there's tremendous value that I think you can be bringing to yourself by going to somebody bigger, so that the next time you go to a startup, you have more knowledge about the bigger org and how that org is structured, right? And you have to decide. Now, you also have to decide, well, how much politics do I want to deal with? This is one of the reasons I don't like working at big companies and never really did, because I literally hate politics. I'm not good at it. Um, Scott is a master of politics at companies. He's the one I would call for advice on this stuff. But I think that's the trade-off, right? And how much, by the way, how much money are we talking about? What's the delta?
I don't know. Could be a lot. Could be a lot. Who knows what that potential next job is? So who knows?
But think about it. So you're at your current role. You don't have to tell anybody your salary. If you went after that bigger job that you're talking about, what does the research tell you what that salary is? Is it 50 grand difference? Is it 10 grand difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to do more research on that.
Yeah,
Probably 50K. Probably 50 to 50K or more.
50K a year more. It's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to go.
That's a meaningful amount.
That is life altering amounts, because you'll never go, short of a COVID or a recession, you don't ever want to go back down again. Right. So, I'm happy to tell you that when I lost my job in 2008, I was making 110 grand base, another 70 on top of that. And I went to work for Scott as a director or as a sales manager, 2 roles down, and I cut my salary in half.
Yeah.
Right.
During a similar kind of situation, that was like 2008 or 9, right, Richard?
Yeah. So, and there was nothing Scott could do about it. Like Scott actually bumped me up when I told him the story. He liked me enough to trust me with it. But I think you need to know what that delta is, and I think it's time to go. And I'm going to shift this a little bit. This is the part when it comes to salaries, and particularly for women, always ask for $5,000 more. And I say this more to women than men, because if you don't start asking sooner, over the life of your career, the studies show that you miss out on $100,000 or $200,000. So don't be afraid to ask for a little bit more, right? It's okay. It's not offensive to say, "Oh, I was sort of expecting another 5 grand."
I would couch that advice, by the way, more for people who are director level, VP level, because if you show up as an SDR or an AE hire, I'm looking at you, Jacqueline, and you try to push me to pay you $5,000, $10,000 more, I'm gonna kick you out the building probably. But if you show up as a director or a VP and you ask for more money, that's a different situation.
Yep. I will support Scott.
Bro. I see you. You good, John?
Yeah, thanks. I don't think there's any real answer. It's just kind of like in the back of my head and don't really know.
I think there is an answer, John. You
the
just
right
don't
answer.
want to take action yet.
So here's my question, John.
Possibly.
Here's my question. Why are you even asking the question? What's making you ask that question?
Because he knows the right thing
because
to do.
It's in the,
he's too tentative and scared to do it.
Scott, he has to say
that's potentially
two hands.
That's potentially it, but like in the past, it's always been like following someone else's orders, where now I'm actually the one driving where the company goes. So it's a completely different role that I'm in. And so my question kind of goes back to the experience in doing that and really navigating the company versus just going back into my lane.
Yeah. I also think you're able to take what you've done now and parlay that experience into another role that pays you more, that has a different vision of that strategy stuff that you're enjoying doing. Right? You should be able to find some piece of that in the next role and get paid more for it.
Okay.
All right, Vlad. Are you there still, Vlad?
Where's my sandwich?
Salad. This is salad he was making.
Salad,
he's holding a baby right now. Are you able to ask a question while holding a baby?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
He's a quiet one. So
all right.
He's fine. I think my question was related to how do you go about the process of selecting a company, what stage the company is, and what sort of factors you're looking for in your selection process, right? So I'm talking about like seed funded companies versus a round of financing and etc. Yeah, just curious what your way of thinking is, Richard, and Scott, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I have always been lucky enough to at least thought that the company I was working for I could get behind, right? Even for the role that Scott hired me for at Leap Fish, it was different, but I could get behind it because it was also a move into a more startup SaaS play, which I needed in my career. So for me, I needed that piece. I needed that thing. And again, I just had a baby and we just bought a house. You know, literally, we moved into our house October 31st. I was let go on November 16th, and I started with Scott the 1st of January. Like it, and moved that fast because I felt like I didn't want to have it. We didn't even have health insurance, if I recall, Scott. Um, so, so it matters in, can I be passionate about this product or service, right? I don't think you can fake it or make it around a product that you're not interested in. You have to figure out if you can, right? Like Scott's last gig at Qualia wasn't sort of the trendiest of SaaS companies, but it's blowing up, and he was able to figure out that he could get behind it and grow it, and that really matters. Then I do look at, Series A, B, C, Series C, seed funding. I do look at you, Vlad, with a baby on your shoulder, and series, seed funding feels a little more risky. If they're going to
Sure,
pay
yeah.
you, that's fine, but that's okay too. It's not a terrible experience. Um, you know, my, you know, you can't risk health insurance for the baby. You can for you, but not the baby kind of stuff. It's not risky. And then I look at the people, like what kinds of people, where did they come from, right? And this is no offense to anybody from Salesforce, but I've seen a lot of people who come out of Salesforce, and there's a Salesforce Jedi mind trick that they have, and they can't stop talking about it, and they can't stop saying, well, Salesforce, we did this. It's like, yeah, but this is a Series A company. Stop it, right? Like you got to understand. So I think looking at those people matter. I think it goes back to Anthony's question: how much autonomy do I want? Do I have? I don't know if you're looking for a straight up sales role, Vlad, or if you're looking into management. What kind
No,
of
for now, just as a sales role. So as a single individual contributor.
Yeah, so there's a lot of freedom that comes with sales roles, particularly now in work from home. Like it's the best time than ever to be a salesperson. Inside sales, is a grind. So those are the things I look for. I guess my question is, what are the things that scare you about a seed and a seed company, a Series A company, a B company?
Well, I think I've just been burned twice now with seed funded companies, and the expectations were really different than and kind of it's partial on me for not digging deep enough and figuring out what stage the company was in, and I totally own it. But also that I was promised, the land, and nothing, of course, realized, and that's
But
just,
then,
that's just the nature of it, I guess.
yeah, but I think that's a great experience, right? I think that's something you can bring up in the interview, and they could say, so what questions do you have for us, or why do you want to work here? And say, well, I'm still not sure. That's why we're interviewing, but I do want to tell you this experience I had. And I can't do another experience like that where I was promised A, B, and C, and I wasn't even given A, right? And I think it's an appropriate, at the right time in the interview, at the right moment, when it's your turn to ask questions, positioning something around that's really important. It may weed you out, but maybe
Oh,
that's doing.
absolutely. I'm not afraid of it. I think it's actually positive that you can,
Yeah.
you can disqualify some of the companies based on your questions. I think it's
Yeah.
it's a good thing.
So, because it's interesting. They always say, why do you want to work here? What they're really saying is, and they don't even know it, in my opinion, is, what kind of company do you want to work for? That's what they should be asking, in my opinion. So.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to do one more question before we wrap it up for the night. And it's my guy, Scott T, who I mentioned at the beginning. And he messaged me today on LinkedIn, I think it was LinkedIn. I can't even tell anymore where people message me. I just reply to things. But I think it was LinkedIn, and he had a couple really good questions. And I'm glad he's here. And fire away, Scott. Let Richard have it.
Yeah, thank you for the intro. Hi, everybody. So, something I was talking to Scott about was, the interview process. Sometimes it's not taken it's sometimes one way, not two way. It needs to be sort of dating, right? Because it has to be a fit on both sides. So, Richard, I'd love to talk to you about a good way. How can we make sure we vet on our side that it's a good match for us? Not just, not just because we want to land a job, right? But we want to make sure it's the right place, with the right culture, with the right everything, that it's a good fit for us. Because I recently went through an interview process, and it's like I got the answers I wanted to hear. Maybe it was bias confirmation there, confirmation bias. But how do we verify a lot of that? How do we make sure it's a good fit on the prospect side for where would we land up?
Well, there's a couple of things. So one, everything's a signal, right? It's neither a good signal or a bad signal. It's just a signal, right? We can be promised the world, but it's not always going to happen that way. I think this comes back to what you're really asking me is, where can I find the dead bodies? And somewhere in the interview process, in my opinion, is when, at some point you're going to talk to the team as opposed to the leader, right?
You better, by the way. Not everybody does that, Richard. Hammer that point home.
Right. So these are the kinds of questions I would ask. I would be asking, what kind of things are you looking for, Scott, so that I'm the right fit and can get stuff done to make your job easier? Because they're never, ever, ever gonna, they're never gonna tell you that, right? I also think it goes back to that, hey, if you could snap your fingers, question is a good one, because you can get that confirmation piece of like, okay, well, why isn't that even happening? I think you can also ask the question of, what would a really shitty hire look like? If you hired it's sales. We all know people have hired the wrong salespeople. What's a bad salesperson look like to you? Right? Get them to define bad as much as it is good, because they'll be a whole lot more honest about the bad than they will the good. You know what I mean? They're going to hide all the other stuff. I think those are really good questions. I also think that, what was the other one I was going to suggest was, I think there's a question is, what questions am I not asking? This is another one that I like. In the right moment at the right time. And you would say, hey, Scott, I'm not doing this, I promise. But if I were also interviewing with your competitor, why would I want to come work here? And that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot about how they view the competitor in general, but it tells you can freak them out a little bit in a positive way. And that's how you can figure out the truth. And then the last thing I would do is, I would still do my backdoor research. I would still ping two AEs and say, hey, I'd love to talk to you. I might say to Scott, Scott, I'm not going to tell you who, but I might go talk to a couple of reps. Are you okay with that? I'd really like to do that. So you can bring it up if they're not putting it in the process. And then you can go to those people and say, hey, what's his leadership style like? How often does he coach? Right? And that stuff's going to get back to him. But if you get answers that you don't like, who cares if it gets back to him? If you get good answers, then that leader's going to go, wow, I'm really glad he asked. Like, he's doing his job, right? Like, if they get offended that you do research outside of their interview process, well, that tells you they got a lot to hide. Hope that was helpful.
Super helpful. Thanks so much.
Cool. Well, thank you, Richard, for spending some time with us. I know, I know you don't mind, but I dropped all your contact info, into the chat. If you don't if you haven't connected with Richard yet, please do. He's super responsive to everything, and a great follow, a great human being, a great friend. Richard and I co-host the Surf and Sales podcast together, so you can hear us go back and forth interviewing super cool, famous people in the sales and tech world. And in case all of you forgot, you get a free pass to be a guest on the Surf and Sales podcast by being a part of this community. And only one person has taken me up on that offer so far.
Who was it?
Maybe she wants to reveal herself. I don't know.
I know who it is.
Me.
There she is.
Was it me?
Yeah, we just did.
Yeah. So you all can be a guest anytime, and if you already had a bug in your ear about maybe going to a Surf and Sales Summit event one day in Costa Rica, hopefully getting a chance to hang out with Richard and listening to him and seeing what he's all about.
I have a question for the group. I have a question, and please don't answer just because you like us. If Surf and Sales put together, a summit that's just virtual, right? And it's, a day long, and we have a couple of different 1-hour sessions all day long or over 2 days. Would people want to come to that, or are people like burnt on all these things?
I would go to some of the, were we doing freestyle here? I would chime in to different sessions. Oh, yeah, I would come to different sessions. I think like full day conferences are hard for me to do right now. If it was like a half day, that would be more realistic. But I would probably pick and choose if it was like a full day, like 2 or 3 hours of it.
What if we did a Surf and Sales? I haven't even said this to you, Scott, till this very second. What if we did a Surf and Sales month where only on certain days we did 1 or 2 hours? So it's not all one day. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, check out what Jason Bay did. Like, how he did like the 3-month thing. That was way more digestible because it was just like every week there was like a session. I mean, not for that long of time, but
I got so upset because he's like, Richard, that's so much fucking work.
Yeah, it's so much work. And the day that I follow Jason Bay is the day that I retire. Right. I love Jason Bay, but I don't do copycat strategy. So when I hear you say, who wants to do a month of Surf and Sales? I'm like, sign me up, because I'll go to Costa Rica for a month straight and have everybody come hang out with me in Costa Rica live and in person. I'd rather wait for that. Now you guys are hearing Richard and I bicker like two grumpy old men, which is basically the summation of our entire relationship.
Right. So,
thank you all for hanging out.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Next week, we have another Tequila Tuesday, and I hope to see you there. Thanks, everybody.
Love you, brother.
Guys, see you again, Richard.
Bye, everybody.